nationally televised debate in 1992, Vice Admiral James Stockdale introduced himself to the public with two questions. Who am I? Why am I here? His follow-up declaration, I am a philosopher, struck a modern audience as a relic of academia, a subject typically reserved for university libraries rather than the practical world. At that point, Stockdale had spent 20 years in the Navy, much of it in the cockpit of a fighter pilot. For Stockdale, philosophy was a method for navigating the high-stakes reality of military service. Shot down on his third combat tour over North Vietnam, Stockdale spent 7.5 years as a prisoner of war. He endured 15 brutal rounds of torture, 4 years in solitary confinement, and 2 years in leg irons. Systematic physical destruction is designed to force the mind to follow. Maintaining sanity in these conditions requires a specific internal structure. Stockdale relied on a handbook written by a Roman slave 2,000 years ago. To withstand an external prison, he focused on governing his internal world. In 1962, a 38-year-old Stockdale entered a philosophy classroom at Stanford University. He spent a year in private tutorials with Professor Philip Rhinelander, studying the literature of human suffering, from the Book of Job to Dostoevsky. On their final meeting, Rhinelander handed him the Enchiridion. The title translates to handbook, specifically something kept ready at hand. Rhinelander noted that Frederick the Great carried a copy of this same text into his military campaigns. The book was written as a functional manual for leaders operating in environments of extreme crisis. The author, Epictetus, was born into slavery in Rome around 50 AD. He served in the household of a secretary to Emperor Nero, witnessing the lethal outcomes of absolute power and systemic cruelty. Epictetus developed a system of internal independence, eventually earning his freedom and establishing himself as a philosopher. His student, Arrian, transcribed these lectures into 8 books, later distilling the core lessons into the Enchiridion. Epictetus demonstrated that freedom exists as an internal state, separate from physical constraints. Stoicism is often confused with the suppression of emotion or the display of a brave face. The Stoic mechanism centers on the inner life. This boundary protects the mind. Physical harm remains external, shattering against it. But the Stoics defined damage as moral failure. Shame, failing one's duty, destroys the inner life from within. In this view, the only force that can truly break a person is their own decision to abandon their principles. When Stockdale was taken to the Maison Centrale prison in Hanoi, these theories became his primary equipment. As the senior naval officer in the prison, he was responsible for the behavior and morale of the men captured with him. He used the Stoic concept of the brotherhood of man to organize his fellow prisoners into a cohesive unit of resistance. The utility of the philosophy was tested against the conditions of the Hanoi Hilton. His captors broke his bones and locked him in irons, but they could not force him to accept shame or surrender his internal autonomy. Stockdale returned to the United States as a 3-star officer, wearing both aviator wings and the Medal of Honor. The experiences of the Roman slave and the American pilot suggest that internal freedom remains inaccessible to external force. Reflecting on his years in captivity, Stockdale reached a conclusion consistent with the Enchiridion: I am the captain of my soul.
This is Words of Wisdom. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspirational content.